Now we will hear from Amy Ellen Schwartz.
Well, thank you very much for having me. So I actually want to pick up the stick at the other end. And so rather than asking how can we change the distribution of people, kind of pick up the stick from asking if this is where people live, what do we do? Neighborhood matters. Where you live matters a lot for your school outcomes. It matters for which school you go to, because we know of school assignment policies that take where you live and turn that into which school you go to. More fundamentally, it even limits your choice set. So even if we went to more school choice, kids don't actually want to travel that far to school. And I know in the room is going to be a bunch of people who will say about how they're on a train for 45 minutes to go to school. There certainly are people who do that, but on average, people don't want to do that. They'd like their kid to go to a school that's close by, where their siblings go, where their cousins go, where they can walk, they can go to after school. And so neighborhood matters to which school you go to. Potentially affects the quality of the school. It affects that because of who wants to teach there and sort of what's the capital of the parent body. It affects your peers. It affects the community resources. What's in your neighborhood? What's your neighborhood like? What are your opportunities for after school? How close are you to a good supermarket? How close are you to the park? What's available for you in the summer jobs, all sorts of things. Where you live really matters. The question is, if that's the case, and it could be that we do what Richard suggests, and I'll be the first one to be surprised. But I think we have to think about what do we do now that we are where we are, and I think there are things that we can do. So let me just give the shout out for some school choice. I think that's an obvious place to start. The days of you go to exactly one school and it's based on your residential address, I think are no longer with us. We have all sorts of school choice of various kinds around the country, and certainly that has done some good things. So what can choice mean? It could mean charters. It could mean vouchers. It could be magnet schools, or it could be just open choice, where you can go to any school inside your district. And so you can be for school choice without being for any one particular version of that. And there's interesting work on that. I think that's saying that it is being taken up, but I should say that I don't see that it's having a huge effect on segregation. And so one of the most disappointing things perhaps is that when you see that there is school choice, a lot of kids choose and a lot of families choose to go to just the school they would have gone to before. And in fact, in New York City, which has had a considerable amount of choice, and I've studied at some length, school choice hasn't done a whole lot to reduce school segregation, nor do I see that it's doing a huge amount to change residential segregation, although there was some possibility that it could have, because it decouples where you live and where you go to school. And so the promise in some ways was we're going to decouple those things, and then people could live wherever they want to live, and they don't have to think that just where I live is going to determine where I go to school. And so there was a hope, and I don't want to be pessimistic, but I don't think that's that's delivered a whole lot just yet. So school choice, I'm a big fan. It's a nice opportunity, but I actually don't think that's enough. And what I would instead want to focus on is sort of what is all that other stuff. And so if we think that our list is that peers matter and schools matter and community resources matter, and sort of what's in your neighborhood matters, then I want to think about how do we tackle those things. And so let's start for a minute with the schools matter. We spent an awful lot of time over the last decade or so following this idea that if we squeeze the schools and we put more pressure on the schools, that they're going to solve a lot of our inequality problems. What's not to like? Schools are really important public institutions, huge part of our budget. We spend a ton of them. Everybody goes to one. That's where the kids are. But I think there's a limit to that. And a lot of that attention has focused on the classroom in particular, for us trying to, improve classroom instruction, improve teacher quality. And I wouldn't say we've seen no impact. We certainly have. things have gotten a bit better. Whether you think it's gotten a lot better or, like a little better or a little more than a little better, it's gotten a little better. And I think we have to do more than that. And so, I want to sort of stand up for looking outside the classroom. And that to me also means embracing all of these other things, like what goes on after school, what goes on in the summer, what goes on at home, and that means looking at your community. So I know I don't have that much time and can't hit up all of the possibilities, but I want to talk about a few of those. For one thing, we really do have to think about what's important other than test scores, because test scores, first of all, are only really measured in a couple of subjects and for part of a kid's academic progress. And so you really want to think about all sorts of other things, not just test scores. What delivers kids' health and well-being. It means thinking about the summer and out of school time. So why don't kids go to after school? Well, what we know from research is that low-income families and high-income families do different things with their kids after school and in the summer. And some of that is undoubtedly about preferences. Some families want to send their kids to Bible camp, and some people want to send their kids to, the arts program. And, I don't think our issues are along that dimension. It's not, is it science or is it art? It's, what are they doing? Are they hanging around? Are they watching TV? Are they getting into trouble? Teenagers are complicated. A lot of middle-class families, what do? They find things for their kids to do. They have internships for them. They have structured programs after school. And what we know is that poorer neighborhoods have fewer of those. So rather than them being really rich in these things, they're actually harder to get those things than it is in a higher income neighborhoods. And so I think that's a place where we can start doing something good. And someone's going to say, what evidence do we have? We have some. We have mixed evidence on it. It'd be great to be back here in 10 years and I can say, yes, we have all this great evidence. Let's try it. Let's spend some money. Let's try to figure this out. What if we tried to strengthen the neighborhoods? I've done some work recently on summer jobs, and I think there's a copy of a paper in your packet. I think summer jobs programs for kids are just brilliant. It's just not that much money. You're giving a kid a summer job, and the kids do better in school. They stay out of, they are less likely to get into trouble, long-term impact on earnings. They're doing jobs that benefit the community. It seems like a small intervention, but you're taking a time that's otherwise going to waste. And so I think we can do something about that. I think we should be thinking about what do kids do when they are not in math class and reading class. What are they doing? What are they doing at lunch? What are they eating? Are they healthy? Where do they go? What do they do? What happens to attendance? So I've been doing, my own work trying to make sure that we do those. Our kids are hungry when they come to school. Let's try to bolster those things. I've done a lot of work looking at school mobility, trying to figure out if we can try to solve these problems by getting kids to move to different neighborhoods and, increase mobility or try to deal with the problems attendant to mobility. So on the one hand, I think there's good news. The good news is that, people do move. We've done some work in New York City. It shows kids do move schools. They do move classrooms. They do move neighborhoods. In fact, we have a school system that is designed for mobility, which is a funny thing. Other places, most kids go to the same school from the time they're, 5 to 13. Not here. In the U.S., we expect kids to move, elementary to middle, pre-K, something. We could have less mobility, and that might help. But we have to be a little thoughtful about that, because we don't always know why kids are moving. And it looks like kids who are moving in the middle of the school year, who are moving to worse neighborhoods, are particularly disadvantaged. So we can try to shore up some of those things, address some of those problems. But in the end, I don't really, for every kid who moves out of a bad neighborhood, there's an empty apartment there. And somebody moves into it. And we have to think about how to strengthen those places and strengthen those schools so that all of those kids do better. And we're not just, moving the deck chairs. So I'm looking forward to talking more about that.
Again, I want to remind you that the hashtag for this meeting is @segregated_schools. And also, if you have a question, you should have a card in your packet. And so prepare your questions, and we will have staff to come around and pick it up, because we very much want to engage the community